And we're back. Today we're going to be talking about the plague of women, the struggles for women in the area in the Middle East, especially Saudi Arabia. For that, we have our old friend, Anthony Avis Dubuisson. Anthony, welcome back.
I'm glad to be back, Kevin.
Oh, we're glad to have you back.
Yes, absolutely. Last time, I know you did a fantastic show with us last time, but for some of our audience that might not have heard who you are, would you be so kind to give us a Reader's Digest of who Anthony is?
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Anthony Avis Dubuisson. I'm an essayist for the website philosophyismagic.com. I write about politics, history, philosophy, and I occasionally write poetry and short stories. And I mostly am involved in other human rights activities as well on the side. So yeah, that's a little bit quick of me.
Okay, fair enough. Anthony, you wanted to bring to light some of the struggles that women are facing in that part of the world. So where do you want to take us with this?
Okay. So essentially I've come on here today to, I guess, raise awareness about a campaign that's going on for Saudi women in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Currently, Saudi women are protesting for an end to male guardianship law. And for all those who don't know what male guardianship law is, it's essentially in Saudi Arabia, women have to have male guardians.
Inconceivable!
And these male guardians have you could say dominion over their lives. So when it comes to their education, to their travel, to their basic rights, they're all, you could say, superseded by men. So men will have to ask for them to travel or allow them to travel, to work, to get an education, even to do basic operations. You need a male guardian, even to ask for emergencies, and even to drive. They can't drive in Saudi Arabia. And what's happened? Sorry?
No, so essentially you're saying that women cannot do absolutely anything out there in public unless they're accompanied by a male relative.
Now, who's responsible for this unwarranted attack on my person?
Yes, because their identity as a human being is not recognized within Saudi Arabia. And what male guardians often do to their, you could say, to their female counterparts is that they'll abuse a lot of their women. And because of this, a lot of male guardians don't get, you could say, the proper justice that they need when they abuse their woman, and women don't get, protection from their abuse. So what women have come onto social media to do is sort of to raise awareness of their suffering. And they're trying their best at the moment with a campaign called Stop Enslaving Saudi Women, which is currently, it has a hashtag in Arabic, which I will not try say, but it's on its 100th day today, which you got me actually at a good time, because technically it's 101 days my time, but it's 100 days. So it's been going on since June, and it's a campaign to try to raise awareness on social media and other parts as well about the system. So CNN and a couple other foreign media, you could say, have done programs explaining what the movement's about, what guardianship law is about, and so on. And it's just what the aim of it is to try raise awareness of the plight of Saudi women and to try have some form of change to the system to allow women basic rights and liberties.
No. Yeah. Anthony, you've studied the question of Islam a fair little bit yourself.
Yes.
Is this really something that was tagged on to Islam, or is this something that's actually in the quote unquote holy text?
Well, we all know that I should say that with Islam does justify, if you will, the clothing of women, or you could say the dominion of men over women within Islam. However, in regards to Saudi Arabia, prior to the 1970s, the male guardianship law was much more laxed. So you would have women who would be able to drive in certain areas. It was not perfect because, again, this drags on, if you will, from history of Islam within the region and within the Middle East region as a whole. And there were cultural pressures on women to sort of veil here and there, but it was not at the same, you could say, extent as it is today. But it was not until the 1970s with political uprisals of Islamist groups within countries such as Iran and within Saudi Arabia that this changed. So, for example, in 1979, if I'm correct, a grand mosque was seized by a bunch of Islamists who thought that the country was being too westernized, because the prior kings, King Faisal and King Saud, had, you could say, allowed women certain privileges, so the ability to go to sort of schools here and there, and the country was going towards a westernization. However, the Islamists did not like that, so what they did is in 1979, a group of them seized a mosque.
I renew my objection to this pointless endeavor. Informally now and by affidavit later, time permitting. And
there was a lot of blood, a lot of, you could say, destruction and what have you. And after the perpetrators were captured and executed, the King Khalid gave more power to the religious conservatives because his solution to religious, you could say, uprising was to have more religion. So he allowed the religious conservatives and the ulama, which is like the head of within Saudi Arabia and like that, to have more power. So the religious police could enforce greater restrictions on women. They could force women to veil up and what have you. So yeah.
So you're saying, hold on a second. So you're saying this guy's his idea of problems caused by religion was to install more religion?
Yes, I know it sounds crazy, and that's what he did. He gave more power, if you will, to the religious conservatives. Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty amazing thinking. There's a cognitive dissonance in there somewhere for sure. Okay,
you could say so.
So this phenomenon of women being, for lack of a better term, shackled to their male counterpart is relatively recent.
Well, it's actually, you could say, yes, within Islam, that kind of attitude of, subservient, you could say submission towards males it comes from Islam originally. However, within Saudi Arabia, the current laws, the current restrictions were given more power because of, you could say, the political uprisings of Islamists within the Middle Eastern region. And it's because of this fear by Islamists or very religious conservatives that the country was going towards, infidel or kuffar nature, and it needs to be stopped away from that. So these groups, or what they do, is to enforce more religious law to stop that westernization because they're so afraid of the West. Because they literally, for example, I'll take an example. On social media, I am with a bunch of other associates who are human rights lawyers and who are essentially from outside of Saudi Arabia. They view our involvement in the campaign as some Western conspiracy. They view it as people like myself as being a part of a Western agenda with this movement. And because they view it like that, they can sometimes, you have a lot of the people who are against this movement who say that, oh, look, it's the West, look what the West is doing. They're influencing this, and they're trying to make our society more westernized. You can't listen to them. And they try brush off the whole movement because there's some foreigners who support it.
Yeah,
but that's such a popular. I don't know whether popular is, but that's such a popular way to dismiss things that are going on in your own country. You say it's the foreigners that are doing this, and that way you don't have to accept responsibility for the things that you're actually doing within the country. It's all their fault, and it's a power movement that is used too often, and many times it works.
You can't handle the truth.
This weekend, I just watched this little documentary on Netflix. I think it's called Saudi Arabia Exposed, and it's really horrendous what you actually see in this country. I mean, there's this scene where this he's like a street musician. He's walking around with his lute, and he's stopped by the morality police, if you could call that, the religious police, and he's told, you're not going to play that in public, are you? He says, well, no. So he just walks away for 5 minutes, and just like every freaking musician, sits on a corner and starts fiddling with his lute a bit. Well, they come around, and they grab his lute, and they break his lute and his finger. Oh. I mean, how this is beyond just Western influence. For a guy to play music, that's not Western influence. That's just human nature. So I don't understand where this argument can come from, that it's all Western.
Yeah, and the thing is that within Saudi Arabia, the government is very paranoid of losing its power, losing its influence, and it cracks down severely on dissidents. I mean, we have one famous case of Rafes Badawi, who was, for simply writing against the government, sort of criticizing, if you will, the government, and not even criticizing much about Islam. He was imprisoned and sentenced to 1,000 lashes, and he's still in prison today. And his wife, Ensaf Badawi, is doing work and trying to, if you will, try to get Rafes Badawi out of jail for that. And that's just one example of many dissidents who are.
His wife is actually right here in Canada, in the province of Quebec, in Sherbrooke. And she's got 4 kids. Is it 3 or 4 kids? And they haven't seen their father in 4 years now. And, for her, the struggle for her is to try to keep up the hope for the kids that they will see their father eventually before they actually become adults. And Rafe was given like 50 lashes of his 1,000 lashes. And he hasn't been, of course, it was terrible. 1,000 lashes, I don't think anybody can even survive something close to that. And he's been in prison ever since. So they've kind of put away the lashing right now, but he's still locked up over there for simply writing in a blog.
And the thing is that there was another activist who was an atheist who criticized religion and the state. Now, I really wish I could remember the person's name, but he was only 17 and he was executed. He was beheaded. And it's quite a sad thing that, like, I think it was 17 or 20. I must really, someone has to double check me on that. I'll try to hopefully remember the name later, and I'll try to sort of give it to you later. But
I'm sure Tyler's listening, and I'm sure he'll find a way to double check on you.
This person was just to be so young and to die simply because you don't believe in what your culture or what your government says is the truth. Because in Saudi Arabia, they put so much emphasis recently on sort of making sure you learn Islamic history, learning anything about Islam. And don't get me wrong, that there are many Saudi women, actually the majority of Saudi women within this campaign are Muslim themselves. And there are some who favor this system, and they're called dabours, if I'm not mistaken. It's a word that literally means someone who loves the system. They love their male guardians. And then you also get women who are given the status of men within the media, for foreign media, to say how good the system within Saudi Arabia is. So they're PR people. It's called Sak al-Walahi. Yeah, I can't pronounce that in Arabic, but I think I've got the best pronunciation of that.
You're still doing better than us.
Yeah, but it's essentially when you allow women the same status as men, only on the condition that they make a positive image of Saudi Arabia. So what they do is that they go to foreign media and they lie about the country and how good it is to women. And like, look at me, look, I can do this. Women love the system. The propaganda pieces for the government.
Wow, that's outrageous. That's outrageous.
Yeah.
I always wonder, especially when, around here, there's always a lot of questions about the headgear, the headwear, hijabs, and all that. And I have a hard time. Frankly, I really do have a hard time understanding how all these women in Saudi Arabia are saying, "Oh, we just love wearing the hijab." Are you telling me of all the women in your country, not one of them says, "You know what? I don't want to wear a hijab," and she's allowed? I can't buy that. I just can't buy that. 100% of all women in Saudi Arabia want to wear a hijab or a burqa or whatever else.
And the excuse is really about modesty culture. They come with the excuse that, this is for modesty. It's for, like, women have this ability, they have this freedom to wear this hijab or what have you, and it's all about, keeping modesty and keeping, within Islam. And look, it's making me free, it's making me liberated, look at me. When in reality, it's if you know what it is, it's just another form of religious imposition. And it's very sad that some of these people have this like mentality that, okay, this hijab represents liberty, when in reality it doesn't. I mean, for example, I'll give you a good example. Within Saudi Arabia, it used to be the case when Saudi Arabia used to have slavery. And by the way, slavery was only abolished within Saudi Arabia in 1962.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
That's when it was abolished.
Youch.
But
1962.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and because it was only abolished because of international pressure. It's like Britain and other countries were like, guys, please stop your slavery. We don't like it. You've been having it too long. I mean, we got rid of our stuff like 200 years ago. Why you still have it? But as I was saying,
Deb, you wanted to interject here.
A couple things come up because now we've moved on to a completely different thought that I might have. But as far as liberties and what someone is choosing to wear for themselves, right? Yeah. If they choose to wear a hijab, good on them. If they choose to wear a bikini, good on them. Doesn't fit into their culture, that's their problem. But for me to sit on this side of the planet and look and say, those people over there ought to be able to, blah, blah, or they should want to, that I think is just as much of an imposition of my thoughts on them as what we're assuming their religious or governmental standards are.
Yeah, I would agree with that. They ought to be able to, I think is the correct way to say it.
Right.
But they ought to, that's another thing.
Right. But I hear a lot from this side of the planet where other cultures should want what I have. I have this freedom and they should want that freedom too. And I find that to be just as much of an imposition as you're free, right? You choose. And so for me I think that, revolution comes from the inside. It doesn't come from the outside. Mm-hmm. So, and going back to what we were just touching on was this whole idea about the slavery thing is how did these other governments influence their government at that point in 1962 to abolish the slavery? How do we make a government uncomfortable enough to change their law for an entire country, right? So, yeah.
I just want to touch that. It used to be the case that in the old days, sort of like prior to when slavery was still around within Saudi Arabia, it used to be the case that if you were wearing a veil, you were considered free, and those who weren't wearing a veil were considered slaves, and slaves to the kuffar, or slaves to, you could say, the non-righteous way, if you will. And to me, honestly, is that I take the position, I'm not cultural relativist at all, or you could say a moral relativist. I assert that there are superior cultures and there are superior values that deserve, I guess, to be spread. And I guess that's just my position. But I do fervently believe that we, at least in the West, they should have the ability to wear or wear not what they want. But I do believe that these individuals, it's not the case like in Iran or Saudi Arabia that they have this choice to wear what they want to wear with the hijab or like that. These things are mandated by the state and mandated by cultural pressures. And these cultural pressures deny these women basic liberties or basic freedoms. And I know that you could say, okay, I guess it's their culture. Why should we judge their culture? Well, their culture's having a lot of suffering. And I do think if that's sort of like not a litmus test, I mean, an analysis of that suffering is that it's not good for the society, and therefore one should do something to change that. At least that's from my opinion.
Okay, well, let me play devil's advocate here for a sec because I love doing that. Now, we were talking about ought to or should be able to. So let me throw a wrench here. What if we say, for example, that we do have the numbers here that prove that the secular society is actually more productive and more prone to better human development? Would that give us the right to be a bit more forceful on their culture? Devil's advocate here.
Influential or forceful?
Well, would that give us a bigger stick to whack them over the head?
And then it backs up to my previous comment on how does one government influence another government? How do you make them uncomfortable enough, right? So influence, you cannot force. That just creates, right? You can deny them to play in your sandbox, and benefit from your.
Well, it's kind of hard to do that in a global economy, right? Like it or not. So that was just.
Is that because you need from them? You can't get what you need from them from anywhere else?
Well, considering they're sitting on the biggest oil reserve in the world, I guess so.
Well, then going right back to an earlier discussion about our
Anthony, care
fetish
to
for oil.
Well, the thing is that I'll just maybe take, I guess, Saudi Arabia, for example. People have the notion that Saudi Arabia, because they have oil and that they have power, I guess, over the United States or what have you. And where that may be true, yes, but I do think that, the United States has a lot of influence over Saudi Arabia, conversely. Because, for example, the Saudi Arabia is afraid of Iran, and it's been afraid of Iran's growing relation with the United States. And because of that, it's sort of like its attitudes can be changed. Because I think really that there's a bunch of ways you can really influence how a country operates or whatever. You can do it militarily, you can do it through sanctions, you can do it through culture, you can do it through... There's a number of ways you can do it, and it's sort of almost like, multi-pronged effect. Or as to say, I would rather prefer a cultural sort of influence where you sort of have a grassroots movement coming up, where you sort of like inspire those within the society to take up their own and to sort of change their own society without necessarily having to go in yourself. There are some cases, like there are some war hawks that I know, like some neocons I talk to, who are very gung-ho on the notion of we should just go in this country and go guns a-blazing, do democracy. And we know that's very naive and sort of doesn't always work. But I am of the approach that, it needs a multi-pronged approach should be taken. So there must be not only a grassroots movement, but there should be some, you could say, pressure internationally, either through sanctions or preventing them to doing this or that. It's those kind of things. I think the military option, if anything, should be a last approach, and that's really a last approach. That's sort of that what differs me from my neocon friends.
Yeah, that's a joke, son. Don't you get it? I made a funny, son, and you're not laughing.
But yeah, hopefully I was not waffling on about something else.
No. But do you feel, Anthony, that with especially with the advent of social media, I mean, I know in Saudi Arabia you're not even allowed to film, but everybody has an iPhone today, even down there. Yeah. I mean, they're just not going to be able to hold back the tide of social media and new technologies. Don't you think it's a losing battle for them?
Yeah, exactly. A lot of Saudi women have technology. They're not like in the Stone Age. They have their technology. They have their phones. They have their smartphones, iPhones. However, what the government does is it simply censors websites like YouTube, censors your ability to call outside of the government via Skype or WhatsApp and what have you. However, a lot of them use Twitter, which is actually quite interesting. Twitter is one of the main avenues, if you will, for women to sort of speak their mind. They don't use their real names because the government, if they know you have your real name, they can actually, take you to a court and they can put you before the court. They look what you're doing on social media. You shouldn't be doing that. We're going to put you in a care house. They call it a care house. It's actually not really a care house. It's sort of like a house that's a jail cell, if you will. That's for care of your woman or whatever.
You've obviously lost your mind and you need a little help with that, right?
Yeah.
Wow, that's bad.
We do this to our seniors here.
Well, Anthony, do you see that within the government or within the male structure in Saudi Arabia? Do you see any hope that any of the men, are becoming a little, more liberal or lenient, or do you think it's all lockstep and it's going to take a revolution rather than an enlightenment of the ruling class? To use I hate to use that, but it's the only thing that comes to mind. But do you think it's going to take a revolution rather than enlightenment, or that enlightenment stands a chance?
Well, I think that I've had a lot of debates with a lot of Saudi women. Most of them are really, they just want to do it through a sort of a grassroots kind of movement. But there are some radicals who say we should get up arms and do something about it. And I say to them that, okay, if you want that to be the case, and I do agree with a little bit of radicalism, but I also have to say that, the government cracks down quite harshly on protests. Like, for example, I think it was in 2012, the government cracked down on a protest, like a peaceful protest, by killing a bunch of people, which is not very good. But as I say, to sort of address your, your question a little bit more, I think that, there are men within the system that are actually helping. I mean, there's a lot of men who are male guardians themselves, who actually take good care of their daughter or like that, who can see, oh, look, this is a wrong system. I'm going to do what I can to help. And there's a lot of a lot of men who are helping as well. Now, the royal family has a different set of rules. Like, it says to the public eye, to the West, it says, like, look, we're this, the strong Islamic, how you could say Islamic royal family. When in reality, they have different rules for their princesses and princes. They've got different rules completely for the hierarchy, because the hierarchy aren't, if you will, necessarily submissive to the religious laws or, to the strict laws, because they're the royal family. They can do not everything. I won't say it because I don't know for certain, but I know that they have much more rights than basic sort of Saudi women. And the thing is that it's mostly the religious conservatives who have a grasp of the country. So the ulemas and the mullahs and like that, they have a grasp over the country, and they are the ones that are very reactionary, who bully, if you will, the prince and princess and like that, and the king himself and like that. For example, King Abdullah, the recent King Salem. I think it's Salman. Sorry, King Salman recently is that the recent king, because the King Abdullah died in 2015. Yes. King Salman is quite a different kind of king, because King Abdullah allowed for 30 women to get on the council of I think it was not a religious council, but a council within the government, and it was the first, I guess you could say, one of the major strides, but that was mostly for Western influences, for the West to say, oh, look, they're having progress, when in reality they're not really. But I do think that there's optimism, just to get really back to the question. I do think that there is optimism. I do think that the system will change, whether it be natural progression, which I think that natural progression is quite slow. I think that needs to be a little bit speeded up, and I do think that the international community needs to put a little bit more pressure on Saudi Arabia in order for them to at least change their laws. Not like change an overall change of the system, but change the current law of male guardianship. Yeah.
So Anthony, in conclusion, for all of our listeners that are listening right now, what would you recommend the average person does to help with this situation?
What I would recommend the average person does, and I want to just, before I guess conclude, I want to read out one story before I'm going to give references, and then I'm going to read the story, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would recommend individuals to get educated on this subject, and I would recommend them go to Human Rights Watch. They've got a lot of great articles on the suffering of Saudi women, and sort of one of them is called Boxed In, and I'll provide links to Kevin a little bit later. And the thing is that I would also ask them to take part, if they have a Twitter account or if they have some social media account, raise awareness, if you will, of just what women are going through in the country, and raise awareness of the system, because a lot of people in the West don't even know what's happening in Kingdom Saudi Arabia or don't care. And I know a lot of them will say, why should we care? And I say that, they're your fellow human beings. You are on the same planet, and you have at least some obligation even as a humanist, to do something to help your fellow creature. And I feel that, this may be a very small thing to help with, but raising awareness does a lot, and it raises awareness to the cause that's currently going through. And if Kevin, if it's okay, can I read out a letter a woman sent me, or do you want to add something quickly?
By all means, go for it.
Okay, I'm going to change this woman's name. I'm going to change to Aisha, because I can't reveal her actual name for security reasons. But so here goes the letter. My name is Aisha. I am a 23-year-old woman who comes from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Before I tell of my experiences living here, I wish to say just one sentence, and I want you to read this sentence carefully. When you are born a girl in KSA, you will feel that the only crime that you have committed is being born into the wrong sex. Let me explain why it is a crime to be a girl in KSA. Since I was 5 years old, I knew what the difference was between a girl and a boy. You see, I have a brother. When I was 5 years old, I was arguing with my brother, who was at the time 3 years old. The argument was over food. I told my brother to not throw food on the floor unless he did not want to eat it. It is wrong to do otherwise. However, my brother did not listen to me and continued to throw food on the floor. It was in that moment that my father entered the room. After hearing me arguing with my brother, he beat me with his hands. Why did he do this? Because my brother was a boy and can do what he wants, and I am a girl and have to respect whatever my brother does, even when he is wrong. I remember having to cry in my grandmother's room after that. It was so wrong. As I grew, I noticed more and more the differences in the way that my parents treated me, as opposed to how they treated my other sibling brothers. Boys could go out with their friends, but I could not. Boys could take money and go out freely, but I could not. Boys could sleep where they wanted, but I could not. I noticed that whenever my brothers went out with friends, they never had to be accompanied by my father. However, if I went out, I had to be accompanied by either my brothers or my father. I felt like a prisoner who had to be accompanied 24/7 by a guard, all for being born into the wrong sex. It is not my fault for being born a girl by my mother. When I asked my mother about why my brothers could get to do more things than me, she told me that it was because they were better than me. In other words, boys are better than girls. Brothers are better than daughters. She told me that I was nothing without a male. Your brothers can drive and bring things that we need, but girls cannot. I felt so much shame when she told me this. I felt that I was nothing. I felt that I was cursed. The very fact that my mother could say that as if it were nothing made me feel so hopeless. As the years went on, more and more beatings occurred by my father, and even by my brothers. It was only when I graduated from high school that I decided to change this. I decided to do all that I can to be independent, to show my family that even if I am a girl, I can do many things that boys can do. I can still be a successful person even without their support. When I told them that I wanted to study medicine or nursing at college, they laughed at me. My father and mother did not believe that I could be successful at this. However, I did not care about them because they mean nothing for me. I believe in myself. The next day, I registered into my local university. However, I still have to give my father all the money the university pays for me to allow me to study, because if I refuse, then he will not allow me to study and he will beat me. The first year of nursing was so difficult. I had to learn English language because my course was mainly taught in English. None of my parents are educated, and my father did not allow me to have a private teacher, even when I offered to use my own money. He cared more about money than he does about me. However, despite the difficulties brought before me, I managed to persevere, and I worked hard to learn English, as well as complete my nursing course. I did all things to achieve high grades, and it paid off. For once, I felt so happy. I did achieve some form of small victory. I graduated from nursing college with very high grades, and I wanted to study abroad. I wanted to get a scholarship, but my father said no. He said it so easily. I felt that I lost hope. I became pessimistic. All my dreams in my mind were destroyed because my male guardian said no. Now I feel, whenever I wake and whenever I sleep, as if my body does not have a soul. I cannot study, I cannot work, I cannot marry, I cannot go to the hospital, I cannot pay anything, I cannot visit friends without a male guardian. I am a slave that is forced to be chained for life. Some of my friends have accepted this reality, but I do not want to accept it. I want to break my chains and break my bondage. I want to breathe freely. I want to be free. I want to live my own life, be my own person, all because I am a girl. Now you know what I mean by when you are born a girl in KSA, you will feel that the only crime that you have committed is being born to the wrong sex. I am forced to love someone I hate. However, I am not the only one. There are many like me in my country, many women who suffer as I do. We want our freedom from this tyranny. We want the male guardian system to end. This is my wish. My name is Aisha. I am just another woman who lives in KSA.
Wow,
that's very powerful.
That's a powerful and sad letter. It's so sad.
But she is a spokeswoman for her sisters, for her counterparts, for sure.
Wow, thank you so much for that letter, Anthony. It's I sure hope our listeners take some time to realize that, here in the West, we kind of take a bit for granted what we have, and that maybe by reaching out more to our brothers and sisters in those countries, that maybe we can encourage them to get out of that trap, that religious trap of theirs.
Yeah. Do you have that letter published on your on Facebook, or is that just a private letter that was sent? And thank you so much for sharing it orally with us.
Well, thank you. I was going to publish it with, if you will, an article, because at the moment I'm writing an article, if you will, on the male guardian system. I want to plan on sort of releasing hopefully somewhere time in November, but if I want to, I could actually release that letter on its own. But the thing is I want to write an article and include a bunch of the stories that Saudi women send me, because I am along with about 3 other translators, because I can't speak Arabic. So they translate me the letter, and what I do is I kind of edit it to make it sort of palpable to an English audience. So with that letter, that you could see it had a little bit high English. There was a little bit of editing on my own part, because I had to make sort of it palpable to English audiences, but most of the genuineness is within there. It's her words. I just simply organize them for her to have her voice to come out, if you will.
Yeah.
Well, make it if you can, Anthony. We'd love to have you make it available to us. And
if he doesn't make the letter available, at least make the link to your blog available, so when it does come out, people can actually read it for themselves. And we'll post that in the notes of the show.
That's where I was going. Not just the letter, but the article and so forth, because it's very powerful. And if we can reach some more people who, as we talked about before, will become more aware of what's going on outside their own 4 walls, I think that would be a step forward. And answers Kevin's question is, what can we do? Well, this is one thing that we can do.
So if people want to reach you, Anthony, and find out more about your blog, where can they reach you?
They can reach me at philosophyismagic.com. That's my website. And if they want to find me on Facebook, they just have to go Anthony Avis de Bisson. And if they want to follow me on Twitter, or if they want to, I guess, contact me via Twitter, my handle is Stoic Viper. So I'll send, of course, links to all that stuff to you, Kevin.
I appreciate that, and we'll put that in the notes of the show. Thank you so much, Anthony, for all this. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it was a delight to have you, and we hope you join us many more times. We learned so much from you, Anthony. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Become a regular.
It was nice. It was nice talking to you all. And we should do it again sometime as well.
We certainly will. And that was Anthony Avis Dubuisson. What a powerful, powerful story about the plight of women in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Absolutely.
I mean, we do a lot of goofiness in this show, but this was quite serious, and I'm kind of glad. And
it is the more awareness, the better we are. We may not be able to influence or do anything, but who knows? Eventually, there may be someone who's listening that can have some influence. You never know what knowledge will bring.